thank you. You know, it's funny because initially, yes, my presentation was going to be called the good, the bad, the ugly. You will see that actually, well, the content of the slides feature and wants to be very balanced, and we'll go across and through the whole process, and you will likely find that there are good, there are bad, and there are ugly things regarding AMP, unfortunately, as all these technologies that we need to take into account and assess and work with in our day-to-day basis. However, you know, the superhero movie, this very unknown movie came along a few days ago, and I was like, oh my God, I need to do something with this. You know, this should be a fun, super fun type of session. So I don't know, I promise that I won't be giving away nothing, like no spoilers in case you haven't watched it. How many of you have actually watched The Avengers? Okay, 2 times. Oh my God, Marcus, already a pro here. Okay, don't worry though. No spoilers at all, okay? So, in any case, sometimes our clients or even our bosses, right, they hear, they see stuff on the internet that they really want you to try out. And I don't know who have had this type of experience with AMP. How many of you have had to implement AMP lately? Some ways, at least test it on your side. Yeah, quite a few of us, right? So they hear about this new technology, something that you really need to verify, validate, check. And of course, we, like good superheroes, we say, okay, this job, we try to save as many people as we can, right? It's like, yeah, it's our day-to-day type of goal, right? So I am not a superhero, as you are not, very likely, hopefully. If you have some type of skills that make you a superhero, get in touch with me after. I would like to really work with you. That would be nice to have from time to time. And even despite that, I try to help my clients to assess, to identify opportunities, to recover sometimes because they haven't asked me in the first place for help, right? It's our day-to-day type of thing. And this is what I want you to help you to achieve with AMP. This type of trend of outcome, right? Ideally, this is what our clients, our bosses want when they ask us for AMP. However, unfortunately, in many occasions, we see also these other type of outcomes, right? Like, oh my God, no, I implemented AMP and I lost all this visibility or even conversions and money at the end of the day, which is what the universal language have for making decisions and making things happen in the world, right? So, and this is what I want you to avoid, because unfortunately, many occasions, we are not involved in the process of making this type of decisions, and we are just requested for help when they are already made, right? So let's first jump out of the bandwagon a little bit to go back completely to the start, to completely understand, have a complete and the best possible vision of AMP, and to make the best possible decision based on AMP goals and our own goals as a business, right? Like our own clients' requirements, functionalities, restrictions to make sure that they are completely aligned and if it really makes sense to implement AMP. AMP was initially released to fix this. Slow mobile pages, and it's, well, you know, I check a few, and I assure you, this is completely random. I went to the top websites in the UK and was like, oh, check 11 seconds, check 13 seconds, 13 seconds, and it's like 18 seconds, like, what the heck? What is going on, right? It's like, so fortunately, it's like this. A lot of people will say, oh, Aleyda, this is like easy fix, like, let's make website fast, you know, it's very straightforward. Like, honestly, big organizations, big websites, they have legacy technologies. Non-flexible platforms, it's not so easy. And small companies, they don't have resources. They use WordPress, for God's sake, all these plugins, all these templates, right? So it's not so easy, understandably. However, a fast mobile site is critical, of course, from a conversion perspective, and now will become also a ranking factor. And again, this is funny because, of course, speed has been always ultimately fundamental for business. However, now I can see that many organizations and businesses will end up like actually asking to their SEOs like, oh, can you please tell me how fast is my mobile website? Because I can see it will become a ranking factor. Ranking factor, that is the typical word that many need to hear, right? To take something for serious and also get concerned about something that they should have taken for a long time, in any case. So this is why AMP was released, to help businesses that had no way to implement or to optimize their own mobile website for faster results, to do it in a much more easier way, because all of the elements, the HTML, the JS, the cache, it will easily help us to pre-render and generate the same type of experience and content, or likely the same type of experience and content that we used to have in a faster way, using even Google Cache. So of course, how it won't be so fast. And this is the type of results that we can see, right? The canonical, the original mobile URL, and the AMP one. Yeah, much faster, of course. Like, they don't allow us to use the JS we have always used, a simplifying, pre-render, pre-optimized one only. Like, of course, they have all these type of restrictions and components that we can refer to, but at the end of the day, they are pre-optimized already. So of course, it's faster. That's the reality. Realistically, though, all of the websites that started to implement AMP, they usually did it like this, as an alternate version, because of course they had already their own mobile website that was already configured, that had potentially a lot of restrictions that they couldn't change. So what they did was just to generate an AMP version as if it was an independent mobile version like this. The AMP URL was generated much faster, as we saw before, but it's canonicalizing back to the original mobile version. So the one that gets indexed, the one that continues to be ranked, is this one. Your own original mobile page, which also refers through the AMP HTML tag to its AMP alternative, right? And like this for every single page of our site that we want to enable with AMP. Google has continuously denied that they are using AMP as a ranking factor. However, even if they don't use AMP usage as a ranking factor, realistically, the one final push and criteria that a lot of businesses took into consideration when implemented AMP was to get the extra visibility in the top stories carousel, because it was made a requirement to be shown there, to be included there. That is why all these media companies had to, yes or yes, implement AMP, because it was the only way for them to be included in the carousel. And at the end, Google didn't only show AMP in the carousel, but the AMP was also integrated across the organic results in mobile SERPs. This is real data. Many businesses have this type of performance from mobile. They end up having more visits, more traffic, more clicks, more visibility to their AMP-related pages than the actual original mobile ones, the ones of their own original site. AMP was not left there. It was not meant to be created and provide a faster way to generate mobile pages to be rendered much faster in mobile SERPs, though. It was continuously improved. Realistically, I wish Google gave this type of support to many other functionalities and documentations and options. This case is impressive. AMP now provides components and resources to implement transactional pages like this. Like, with the new privacy law, European privacy law coming, like even a few weeks ago, they already have released this user consent component that will easily help us to implement the validation that users will require now. I'm not kidding. Like, you can see all of the releases of new functionalities that they are publishing on a day-to-day basis. With all of this, AMP has become an alternative, not only for faster mobile sites, but as a framework, as a technology option to develop websites from scratch. And it was in the AmpConf last February when I was also speaking. I could see demos from websites like, for example, BMW. They have built their own website, canonical, original website in AMP, as you can see. AMP HTML, take a look at the address there. It's the original website. Funnily enough, they have an error. Of course, you cannot be perfect. You can see that, even if you are BMW. Anyway, AMP is positioning themselves as a framework, as a technology alternative to deliver delightful experiences. And this was a phrase that they repeated again and again, right? They recently even launched the 0.7 version of the WordPress AMP plugin that will give native support to create entire websites in AMP, and this is super important, especially for smaller websites, and also 1/3 of the web runs in WordPress, also at the end of the day. And they are also fixing, at the same time, many of the challenges to address the complaints of users. Like a lot of users hate it, I hated myself too. The fact that they don't show the canonical, the original URL of the websites. When you click on a result on the mobile SERPs, you are showing there the cache version of the URL, right? So a lot of publishers, of course, a lot of websites, they didn't like this. From an attribution perspective, this is very, well, this is definitely not ideal. This is shitty, right? So they actually released this yesterday. I was actually updating my slides yesterday because they are announcing all these new things in Google I/O event, in the Google I/O event. So they released this, that they have been testing already how to fix this, and they have come up with this option of using web packaging technologies to actually show the original URL when clicking AMP results in mobile SERPs. And AMP page speed, and this is something that actually for me, it really took my attention when they also mentioned this a few months ago, when they announced the mobile speed ranking factor coming up in July. John Mueller got all these questions regarding what was going to be the role of AMP in it, right? Because at the end of the day, if you are not using AMP as your canonical version, but as an alternate one, should it be taken into consideration from a speed perspective or not? Well, he mentioned, yeah, since users from search will be seeing an AMP page, the speed of the AMP page will be taken into account, even if it is a non-canonical AMP implementation. So AMP will actually help us to achieve this goal. So you might be thinking at this point, okay, it's all benefits, right? Let's implement for AMP right now. And I will say, not so fast. It's not all ideal, unfortunately. Google has also confirmed, and you can see it also in the mobile-first web developers' best practices and guidelines, that AMP won't be taken into consideration in Google Mobile First Index if it is not used as a canonical version, which is very reasonable too. So if you have a desktop version of your site, still not somehow a mobile version, and you have AMP, you're pretty much fucked up. AMP won't be used as an alternative to assess your mobile friendliness or to be assessed in the Mobile First Index, because again, it's not a canonical version. Also, the AMP project, and I love this when I saw it, the AMP project also announced that they acknowledged the fact that it was not necessarily that fair to require AMP to be included in features like the carousel. And they were somehow working on allowing non-AMP content to achieve the same benefits of AMP. What does this mean? That in the future, we don't know yet when, but in the future, Google won't require to use AMP to be included in the news carousels, in the top stories carousel, just to be fast, which reasonably, this is what should have happened right from the start, right? But, well, this is coming. So realistically, with all of these changes coming up, right, when is that you should actually implement and use AMP? If your own mobile site speed issues can and won't be fixed in the mid or even long term, if there's no way for you to improve your own mobile web speed, which should be the ideal, and, well, this is improving your own site at the end of the day, if you need to be included in Google Top Story Carousel as soon as possible, right now, you cannot wait for a few months. It should be like critical type of decision. Then yes, AMP also is an option. Or if you're building a new site from scratch, and as BMW did, you select to use AMP as an alternate alternative for technology because it really provides you the best way to implement your functionalities. And there's no way for you to achieve that with open web standards, right? Or it's much more complex, maybe. So I can see these three scenarios, and if you are in any of these three scenarios, is when AMP will likely provide a much higher value. So if you are in any of these three ones, let's take a look at a few of the critical steps to take to really make sure that it's implemented in the right way, and you maximize all of your resources to see the expected type of results and profits, right? So the first thing to do is to plan ahead and specify the AMP implementation based on your site's functionalities, right? Let's realize, if you only want AMP to be included in the carousel and obtain that extra visibility, it doesn't make sense for you to implement it for all of your sites, for your listings, for your product pages, or your category pages. Just start with those where you actually can and want to get that specific value from. So you actually identify those areas that will move the needle from an AMP visibility perspective, if this is what you're looking for, and start with that. Also, verify very well that your required web functionalities can be implemented with the supported platform. And again, they have this amazing documentation where everything is very well specified that you can go and check. Just be mindful. They are all the time releasing new things, right? Like this one, for example. The AMP geo component was released a couple of days ago, 3 days ago or so. And this is for dynamic geo-personalization. This means that AMP will validate from which ISO tag your browser is coming, where are you coming from, and based on that, they will show one or another content to call football, soccer, or football, or whatever other term to personalize and geolocalize your content in the same page. From an SEO perspective, I want to keep independent URLs to be ranked for each one of my international audiences, sorry. So there are many components that is very important, that is fundamental, that you check well how this will align with your current SEO efforts and strategies, for example, with international SEO. So this one in particular, I will say it, for example, I would like to test it very, very well. And if you use it only to deliver trivial, definitely trivial content, not meaningful content to rank with. Identify the best way to structure AMP within your website's organization, right? Because many of us still have independent mobile websites, like in the case of WikiHow, as you can see, they have already an AMP subdomain going on. And what they did with AMP was to enable the AMP version under it with a parameter. But what does this mean? This means that for each canonical original page, we need to generate 2 extra ones that are non-canonical ones. From a crawling perspective, it's not necessarily that efficient, isn't it? And a lot to maintain and to update at a day-to-day basis. So why we don't reuse our already independent mobile version to implement it with AMP directly, right? If we really need to keep an independent mobile version, like AliExpress is doing. Take a look. This is AliExpress homepage under an AMP subdomain, independent mobile version, which is also their AMP version right there. Right? So I will say that this is a very smart way to reuse their independent mobile version to be the AMP version also and make the most out of it, right? It's a win-win type of situation. Also, it's fundamental to redirect desktop visitors to the relevant version. So it's exactly as if you were optimizing for an independent mobile version, right? If I come here on my desktop, you can see this is my desktop computer, my desktop browser, and want to visit this independent mobile AMP page, I should have been redirected to the desktop one. I cannot be left in this URL because it's not the relevant one for me. So it's important to effectively configure user agent detection and refer the user to the relevant device every single time. Ideally, our AMP version should also be using responsive web design. So for example, if I end up going to the AMP version of a page, like in this case, in the Washington Post, yeah, well, it doesn't look that bad. You can see the menu is not completely friendly for desktop. It's not the same as the desktop version, but at least it's not so bad, right? little by little. And if you're using hreflang annotations also for international websites, it's critical that you also place the relevant hreflang annotation in them too. So it's not just because it's a non-canonical version. Now Google is also requiring to implement hreflang annotations in them, as well as with the independent mobile versions, if at any point you also have them. Realistically, the one critical requirement that Google have since the beginning of the year is this one. They introduced this criteria to show AMP pages in search results, to replicate and to show the exact same content that our own original mobile pages. And the reason why they did this is this one. Take a look at the Reddit AMP page here. Well, they are super smart in this case. They were leveraging and targeting and using AMP landing pages, short landing pages, to rank very well, very fast, to be included in the carousels in many cases for many, many informational queries, right? But you can see that in this case, you scroll a little bit, and then in order to see more content here, you need to click on this button. And this button, take a look where it goes. It goes to the original version of that page. It doesn't show more information under the same AMP URL. It goes to the original mobile version of that page. So Google doesn't want this. Google says, no, I won't allow you to manipulate me to be shown if you don't actually show the full content on AMP, and you just use AMP sneak previews to refer to your original pages that are likely slower. OK, so they require that we show the full content, and we'll leave the user in our own versions without referring the user to the original ones. We need to take this further, though. Why? Because you will see that in many, many, many occasions, when you start optimizing AMP in websites that have been already running for a while, you will end up finding that the AMP versions have a sky-high, crazily high bounce rate, and you will see, is this because it's not correctly implemented? Why is this? Is because they are not tracking effectively all these pages? Why is this? And in many, many, many occasions, you will also find this type of gap. Take a look. The original mobile page have all this menu, all this navigation, all these options, and the AMP version, it doesn't have any, right? So how you can expect that the user convert, that the user behave in the same way in your AMP pages than in your original ones? If you don't provide the same options, how they are going to convert if you don't give the means to your users to convert in your AMP version, right? So realistically, even if Google doesn't require this is something fundamental and a basic criteria. And this is why, until now, if you tell me, look, Aleyda, I have no way to implement AMP like this in a very personalized way where I really can replicate my original website look and feel, I will tell you, look, avoid it. Don't use a crappy plugin of WordPress that will generate a shitty version, a degraded, deprecated version of your site that doesn't look actually like your site, that don't provide all the options, all the functionalities than your site. Because otherwise, of course, you will end up seeing a much more poorer type of engagement, and likely not allowing your users that they actually achieve the goals that you're looking for them to achieve, and profiting from those visits, right? So again, another example from the independent is that this super basic, again, the hamburger menu that is included in the original mobile page, nowhere to be found in the AMP version. The component to implement this type of navigations elements have been there for already a while. So this is about not caring about the ultimate type of goal that you want your users to achieve at the end of the day. And this is the type of result that you will end up having, this huge gap between the engagement of your original pages and the AMP ones. So the goal is to keep the UI content and functionality consistent when using AMP as a non-canonical version, like they are doing here. You can see, you can not even tell at some point which is which, right? And after you have made sure that you comply with all of these good practices, best way to align your AMP implementation, then you need to minimize any errors by effectively validating AMP when you execute it with Google requirements. Like this one, for example. This is super funny for me because they were shown as an example. And many AMP documentation. The Zalando website have many of the internal pages in AMP, and the homepage doesn't comply. It's showing a couple of errors there that will not allow them to be shown in mobile search results. So it's pointless that they have taken all of this effort to do this. So what you should do, besides sharing the component, the supported component, the specification, it's critical that you also share the validation errors early to your developers, so they take them into consideration during the process. Of course, you shouldn't forget to implement and to do the proper changes that you need to do to your analytics setting to make sure that you properly track what happens in the cache, in your AMP cache. You don't want false positives. You don't want to see non-accurate data in your analytics for sure. And then, as long as the new AMP pages are released on a test environment, it's critical that you check them, that you validate them. I love this validator because you can even copy-paste the HTML. And if it is not possible to use it, by copy-pasting the HTML, you can actually configure this ngrok tunneling to be able to use all these tools, external tools, to check for content that is close in your organization, that is inside your organization. And of course, you can crawl the whole site before launching it, and you should crawl your whole site before launching it with any of the SEO crawlers that now support AMP validation. I specifically like the Sitebulb one because they categorize each of the issues with the same criteria that you will find in app documentation, and will also be shown like this in the Google Search Console. So it's all well aligned to what you will end up finding when you release the AMP pages here. So, and you can prioritize like this, all the ones that are actually critical to be fixed before the release. And once that you release them, it's about to monitor the AMP impact. It doesn't stay there. You just don't release and expect that everything works well. And this, again, was like very surprising for me to see that the new Google Search Console, one of the first new features that were announced was the new AMP status report like this. The new AMP status report, honestly, is amazing because it's actually an troubleshooting type of tool directly. You can see here, for example, how you can not only see the index pages, but the actual error ones and the trend. And it gives us all this data. For example, once that we release the AMP pages, we should look for the ones having errors, generating errors. We can prioritize the ones that are affecting most of the pages. We don't want to waste time fixing errors that are only affecting a couple of URLs on our site, realistically. So we prioritize the one affecting most of them. We can click on any of those pages and of any of those errors and see all the pages that are suffering from them. Click on any of these pages again and take a look at the code where the error is generated and highlighted there. And then we can actually check the live version of that page to check if the error is still there. And again, we can easily share that specific error report with our developers like this. There is a sharing report option now that will allow us to share any page in a public way with a limited access, of course, but so the developer can specifically see those elements that we want them to fix. Once they have fixed them, we can validate again. And when we validate, there's this new option called validate fix. Again, a way to tell Google directly that this error has been completely removed from your pages, and you will likely get a message like this after a couple of days. This is fantastic. Like this, we are able to use our Google Search Console in a way not only to track, to monitor that the errors have been minimized, but when this has happened, which ones are the ones that have passed the validations, which are the ones still remaining to be fixed. And the evolution, negative, hopefully, of the errors, and positive, of the visibility of the AMP pages, right? So we can see directly the impact of our effort, of our work, rather easily. We should do this again and again, rinse and repeat, with the critical error until there is none to fix. And once that we reach this point, is that we can say, okay, let's take a look at the Google Search Console performance report and take a look which are those pages that are actually getting more clicks, more visibility, more impressions. Let's take a look, and we can click on any of them to take a look at the queries providing this and triggering these pages. Let's identify additional opportunities, which are the opportunities out there not only to optimize the already existing content, but to expand that content with more pages that will likely also generate AMP visibility. We can use run trackers also. A lot of run trackers like SEO monitors allow us to track if there are any sub-features generated for those pages, even if we are not yet ranking for them, but if there are any of them shown for the targeted queries. And we'll easily integrate with our Google Analytics too. So if at some point we are being included or not, we can assess also and prioritize which should be those topics where we should definitely go further and expand our content with more AMP-related information. The same with our competition here. We chart those ranking already with AMP pages, which are the ones getting visibility and profiting from AMP that we are not yet targeting. By doing this, we'll be in a continuous optimization, iterating every single time that we publish something, that we identify something. And we can, in a very cost-effective way, prioritize that content that will drive the growth that we expect, minimizing the errors with a very consistent type of performance, and providing our users also the functionality that they also already are used to of getting on our site, allowing them to achieve the goals that we want them to achieve in our sites. And if at some point, if for any reason things don't go as expected, and you decide, your boss finally say, okay, this is shitty, I shouldn't have asked you to implement AMP, let's remove AMP, whatever, don't worry. There's even actually a very good documentations about removing AMP URLs from Google itself. Again, I wish they took all this effort on documenting many other things in SEO, but there is. So it's actually about removing the AMP HTML tags from our canonical pages, 301 redirecting from every AMP URL to the original mobile URLs, and to refresh the cache. Like this, we will be able to refer all the former traffic or activity that we could have had with these pages to our original mobile ones. And we won't stop, and we will stop showing map at the same time. Hopefully, we love this. I know that there are tons of resources. I know that I refer to many tools here. I will just, after this, tweet the slides. And I know that the Searchmetrics team will publish this also on their blog, so you have all the resources in the slides too, in case you don't want to follow me. Hopefully, yes, though. I promise no more Avengers type of joke. Don't worry. But hopefully, like this, you will be ready to implement AMP, and in a very cost-effective way, if it is actually viable and reasonable and relevant for you. You can see that not necessarily should be like that in many scenarios. So thank you very much, and it's time to go for not necessarily Infinity Wars, but a coffee break, hopefully. Thank you.
There you go. Please welcome. We're going to do one Q&A.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Aleyda, for that. It definitely got me on the Avengers hype again. I just watched it the other day, so I'm struggling not to tell people spoilers right now, too. Okay, do we have any questions? Oh, already, for Aleyda.
Okay.
If we can get a mic, Juliana, right to the front.
First here, maybe, and then...
Oh, there's one at the back as well.
Oh, Barry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Don't worry.
Sorry, yeah, you mentioned that you should use hreflang on AMP pages. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming you mean that only if you use hreflang annotation in the header and not in the sitemap implementation, but can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, well, Google has just required, not only for AMP, but also for independent mobile sites, that before you didn't needed to add, for example, the same type of tagging that you had on your original version, the desktop one, right? Like, and now, for example, they are requiring to include the hreflang annotation in the head of the HTML of your independent mobile URLs, of your independent mobile pages. And the same with AMP. If you are using AMP on your website, on your original website, you just take those same tags and include them in your AMP pages, updating the URLs to be the AMP-related ones.
Okay, I think I understand that.
Yeah, so you take the tags that you already have, you put them on your AMP pages, but the URLs shouldn't be the original ones, should be the AMP-related ones. Okay. That's it. So I guess that they are doing this because they understand that even if these are non-canonical, non-original pages, they really want to understand which is the version that they need to show at every single time, and that if you likely have AMP for, let's say, your English version or your French version, you also likely have it for all the supported languages and countries, and they want to make sure that they not only refer and show the proper relevant original page, but when they are using AMP and showing AMP URLs, they do it so to the other relevant language or country AMP page too. Yeah, just to be consistent. Yeah.
The AMP errors report is sort of my eternal bane of my life, probably you as well, because in the last couple of days, or probably a week and a half, you've seen this as well, you saw that spike in errors. Nothing changed on websites. I think it's because, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, I think it's because they changed how they validate AMP pages. Because previously having an invalid broken link in an AMP page didn't break the standard, but now it does, and now it shows up as an error in Search Console. And that can be tough to explain to developers, like, yeah, we got to go back to those 10,000 articles and fix those broken links. So, you know, do you have any insight in how often they update the standard? Because they don't get any communication from Google when they do this. We just see the errors pop up.
Honestly, I have to say that I have seen weird behavior through the Google Search Console data in many occasions. In fact, like, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, I was doing a little bit of research, and I really wanted to see the non-AMP related pages getting rich results, and it was a mistake. I left the AMP filter on, and I supposedly remove all the AMP-related pages and still got data for that. And it shouldn't have been the case, right? So, and the same with a month ago or so, that there was an increase of errors, and it was supposedly to be a bug, and they fixed it after a couple of days. So for that in particular, I have to say, I believe that in many occasions, these are just bugs that we communicate and they fix right away. I have to say that they are very responsive with this. In other cases, I don't know if this has to do, in any case, because they want to actually take AMP or push further AMP to be used as an original canonical version, that they are starting to assess certain aspects of how it is actually implemented and how it's internally linked, if AMP URLs of AMP pages are actually linking to other AMP pages or to the original ones, if there are redirects, if they are linking to 404 pages, things like that, that they might have been assessing that for websites. However, in that particular scenario that you are mentioning, I haven't seen that in any of the clients that I am handling at the moment with AMP. But there might be, yes, two things, or it has been just a bug. So I will say, like, just inform about it, because
your example actually showed exactly what I see with my clients. That spike with like invalid HTTP attribute in AMP as the main error. That's exactly the error I'm talking about, and those are links that aren't really links in anchor tags on AMP pages, but they're not new articles. Those articles have been around for like years.
But in my case, it happened because it was a forum with a lot of users-generated content that, well, the URL was not correctly formed, was not correctly generated. So it was an actual error in my case, for the one that I show here.
It is an error as well, but it only recently showed up as an error in Search Console.
Can you please give?
It's always been an error, but it's only recently shown up in Search Console as an error, whereas the error has been live on that article for, like I said, years. So, you know, they obviously seem to be constantly adjusting what they consider to be valid AMP.
Hi, how you doing? I was interested in the Reddit example that you made, where they kind of compromised a bit of content for the show more comments that actually took you to, you know, the mobile version of the site. Have you been doing that? Have you been testing at all where you've been trying to compromise functionality to get into AMP? So e-commerce, for example, would you show, for example, a product page and buy this here, because obviously you can't do that yet, but that would then take you to the actual page or maybe even functionality to add that thing to that basket. Have you been doing things like that? And if not, why?
No, actually no, because if you see, for example, in the test that eBay did, it actually took my attention that from the AMP versions, you couldn't sign in, you couldn't still at that point do many things. And so it's just like a simplified version of the AMP, of the original page of the site. So somehow they take content parity into consideration as a rule now, but they done with functionality. I think if that at some point they want to be consistent and to make sure that we deliver the best possible experience, they will, but not yet. So for example, if you, for example, and you see this in many cases, give social buttons, sharing buttons, or comments options in your original mobile versions, and you don't give those options in AMP, it doesn't matter. It's not taken as a criteria right now to flag you as a non-compliant or error type of page. No.
Did it work for eBay? Was there any? Did you say it was eBay that were testing it out? They got a conclusion for that?
I have no idea. They did a post about it. They share how they were generating many of their listings in AMP. And I could see, I started to analyze, of course, I was not involved in any case, I just saw it. But I took a look how they had implemented it, and it took my attention, right? Especially in their listings, like where they will likely want the user to provide the option to register or sign in or the same type of functionality to actually allow them to purchase the product. They didn't yet, right? And I expect that, of course, the behavior of the user will tend to change because of that. They haven't updated regarding the tests that they have done. Realistically, also, Airbnb has done also generated listings with AMP. However, in their case, the functionality is, I think that it was probably the same with minor tweaks from one versus the other. But yes, well, to answer your question, it's not considered to be an error yet, still. But of course, you cannot expect the user to have the same behavior and to obtain the same type of conversions if you don't provide a way to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Brilliant. Before we cut off, I actually have one question that I wanted to ask you from looking at it. Obviously with AMP, the reason it started off with the publishing page is, you can load it quick. It's one piece of content. It doesn't need the user to keep moving around the page. And from the examples that you were actually showing, you showed that, some of the AMP pages lose functionality, and therefore the user's not kind of able to move around the site so much. But how does this work for sites that, survive on ad revenue and those kind of things? Because obviously for the AMPs, they're losing all of that.
No, but you know what? And this again, and I didn't mention, otherwise I will have attended much more, and it's not necessarily SEO related, but one of the first things that they did, especially because they started with the publisher support, was to develop agreements with ad networks and deliver all of these ads also through AMP technology as fast as possible, because you will see at the beginning that all the content of the pages will load, and you will have this empty space there for the ad, and that was terrible. Of course, it didn't help the users to click more, to generate more for the publisher. But they did solve that pretty quickly, I have to say. So they have been very smart in the way that they have implemented it, I have to say, and the partnership that they have built, and yes, it seems that it's working for them.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
So we're going to head off into a little bit of a lunch break, but another thank you to Aleyda for a second.